I'm Kent, and this is another Weekend Adventure Rides XR250 build video. This week, we are going to finally finish the motor and get everything put together. I'm going to show you how to do all of that. But before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe. It really helps us out a lot here. All right, cue the intro. All right, so we have the bottom end of the motor finished, and today we are going to finish the top end. Now, that's going to start with this brand new Wiseco piston here, and then a fresh bore and hone on this cylinder to match the piston. And that was just done at a local machine shop for me. So let's get this thing put together. I'm excited for this portion, and hopefully it goes together smoothly. So the first thing we're going to do is put together the piston rings. Now I've already gone through and made sure that all the piston rings fit the cylinder correctly, and that all of the spaces between the rings are all correct. So that you'll need to do that before you install the piston rings onto the piston, making sure that everything's going to line up and that your piston rings are not running into each other when they're inside the cylinder. So in order for this to work correctly, you'll need to put this oil ring in first, and this is the one that's got all the little bends in it because it's held in there by the two oil rings that are going to go over the top of it. So put that one in there, make sure it's not overlapping and the ends are lining up, and then we're going to put our oil ring over the top of that. Kind of maneuver that on there. And then our next oil ring here. Okay, now we want the openings offset. So according to the book, the installation book, we've got one of the oil rings openings here and then the other one over here. Okay, so now we're going to install the thickest ring. Really, these only fit in one way, so. And then the other reason, or the other thing you want to pay attention to is making sure that the rings that have markings on them, those go to the top. Now this one will rotate so the opening is up there on this side. So we've got an opening here, and then one up on this side here. Okay, so we'll put our next one on. So we have all of our rings on there. Now we're going to go ahead and make sure we put a rag inside around this connecting rod here so that we don't lose the circlips or anything down in there. That would be bad. We want to make sure those are not getting lost. I don't have an extra one. So what we'll do is, using a little pick like that, we'll get the first one put in here. And again, on these pistons, there's a little arrow, and on a lot of Wisecos, that's supposed to face towards the front of the motor, but in this case, it's going to go towards the exhaust side of the motor, which is also the front of the motor, so no difference there, but just so you're aware. So we'll get this first circlip in here. All right, now we're going to get a little oil on this wrist pin here. Lubricated. And same thing with this piston. Our arrow points towards the front of the motor here. And we're going to slide our wrist pin in. Here we go. And push it all the way to the other side, so we can get our other circlip in. All right, now the battle begins with the second circlip. There we go. In there. Now we can remove our rag. Don't want to damage the piston. And then we're going to put our new gasket on there. And I've got this top end rebuild kit that I got from Wiseco. All right, so we have our bottom gasket there. So we're gonna slip that on over the chain tensioner, the piston, and then over the timing chain. Make sure that's in the right spot there. Good. And then we're gonna put these big locating pins in. And that's gonna hold this in place. There we go. Perfect. Okay, now double check your oil ring alignment. We are ready to put this jug on. All right, so we will use a little oil, lubricate up this cylinder, and then some oil on the piston. So I'm actually gonna take the timing chain and just put it down there as far as I can for now. We can get that out of there later. And then we're gonna slip the jug on. This is the fun part of the deal, so we have to compress these piston rings. All right, so after a great deal of swearing and fiddling, I was able to get that piston and those rings seated into the jug, that cylinder anyway. And then we have that all seated down and then lined up with the pins here. And so now we're gonna take these 88mm bolts, flange bolts, and we're gonna go ahead and put those 4 in. They're all the same length. And then I'm gonna check the specs for the torque settings on these, and we'll get those torqued down. All right, so we'll get the torque wrench out here, and we are going to torque these down to 27 to 31 pounds, so probably just gonna set this at 30 pounds and try to hold on to it while I torque it. So we'll get set here. So with a little ingenuity, we got that torque down there. Now, having a magnetic pickup tool is kind of nice to get the cam chain out. Make sure we have all the knots out of there and it's moving freely. All right, looks good. We'll put the piston in top dead center. And if you put the flywheel on, there is a mark on this side that's a little triangle, like we've talked about before, that tells you where top dead center is. Obviously we can see the cylinders on top dead center right now. So we'll look at the 2 marks and we'll line those up. So that's top dead center right there. So this is the cam chain tensioner here, but there's another piece, there's a guide piece that goes right there, don't forget that. So I got an OEM cam chain guide because this motor for some reason did not have one. So this goes in there, and there's a little lip at the bottom that fits into. There we go. And that's seated down all the way there. Okay. So we can go ahead and drop our cam chain back in there so it's not in the way. And we'll get our head gasket here, the new head gasket. Put that on there like that. And then we'll put our dowels in. So in another video, I rebuilt this head here. Get it wiped off. And then we're gonna slide that down over the top and make sure we get those locating dowels lined up. Just like that. All right, looks pretty good. Happy with that. Now we're gonna put our head bolts in. All right, there we go, got those tightened down. Now, we've got 2 bolts that hold this retainer for the cam chain tensioner. Now the easiest way to figure out which bolts go where is to use an OEM chart, and I just use the one from Honda Parts Direct. It's worked out pretty good so far. So I find what the bolt part number is, and then it gives you how long the bolt is and what size it is. So pretty easy to figure out. Flange bolts, 6mm by 80. So now we just have to find the bolts. And I think they are right here. These look like the right size. It's 6mm by 80. So we'll double check that with the calipers. Having a nice set of digital calipers is really helpful when you're doing one of these rebuilds. Okay, so we'll get a measurement on these. And it looks like those are right at 80mm. So we know we have the right ones here. So we'll get those in. So now we can go ahead and get everything torqued down here. So we're gonna set this for 35 pounds now. So just bumping it up 5 pounds. And this is the torque setting for the larger bolts, the flange bolts. And again, probably gonna have to set this on the ground to get that done. Okay, so we've got all of the flange cylinder head bolts torqued down to 35 pounds. And then the two 6mm bolts here, those are torqued down to 7 pounds. And then also 7 pounds for the cam chain tensioner guide there. All right, let's get this thing timed up. Get the camshaft on there, and then we'll finish this up by putting the cylinder head cover on. Now we'll get our cam chain gear here. You can see there's 2 marks on both sides, and that has to be level with the top of this case. And then we'll set our crank to top dead center. Okay, so it looks like we've got our timing chain and sprocket in the right place there. So we'll go ahead and put our camshaft in now. And we want the lobes facing down. Before we get the bolts in here, we're gonna put some lubricant on the end of this camshaft so we can get the bearings on. Okay. Now your bearings, one side is sealed and the other side is open. You want the open side facing the inside of the motor. There we go. Bearings in, and then a bearing on the other side with the open side facing in. Now we will leverage our chain tensioner here. All right, after some more swearing and things, we were able to get this cam chain in the right place and timed correctly. We have the lobes pointing down, and it is on top dead center right now, and the marks on the cam chain sprocket are perfectly level with the top of this head here. So we're ready to carry on. What we're gonna do is get a couple of these dowels in here, and you wanna make sure you don't forget to do this part here, because there's 2 dowels that hold the cam chain in place so it doesn't move side to side. I'm kind of back and forth this way. So we've got one of these little 6mm dowels. We're gonna fit it down in that hole, and we're gonna push it all the way up against that one. And we're gonna put one on the other side. Okay, perfect. And the cam spins freely there, so we've got that. So I'm gonna put it back at top dead center, and we are going to get our new valve cover gasket put on there. There we go. And we've got a couple locating pins that go in there. These are the same as the dowels 6mm locating pin. So we'll put those in. Should be 2 on this. Now to get the cylinder head on, or excuse me, the cylinder head cover, what you're gonna need to do is take all of the inspection covers off, and we're gonna take some little rubber bands, and we're gonna wrap them around like this on those little rocker arms there.
That way they don't fall down whenever we're trying to put this on. There we go, so like that. You can see that very well, but I've got rubber bands going up and around those. Now we're gonna put our valve cover on. There we go. So once you have that on there, then you can take the rubber bands off here. So I've got valve cover bolts, the stainless valve cover bolts, so we'll go get those and get this thing bolted on. Okay, there we go. We're all torqued down. We're going to place the gaskets on these valve cover inspection ports here. Okay, and we'll put this back on. All right, that's it. You've made it to the end. I hope you found some value out of this, or at least some entertainment. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.